So, we're in the midst of a pandemic crisis. You know that just as well as I do. For over half a year now. It's September 2020 at the moment. And maybe in the beginning, like in March, April and May, we were busy also with, hey, what's happening? And this is going to be maybe a big change, or what does it mean? But I see that lately, all of us were more busy with coping, how to keep our distances or not, whether it's true or not, or maybe changing jobs, how to work from home. I mean, all the consequences became also really practical. But I think it's time that we zoom out again and have a look at this virus and maybe the reason why it is actually here. Does it have something to teach us, to tell us? And I know only one person that I could turn to for a very good answer on this big question, and that is the wonderful Susan Collin Marks, who is, besides a dear friend of mine and a mentor to me, also a woman with an amazing state of service to this planet. She's worked for her own company over 30 years already, a groundbreaking peace-building company, which is called Search for Common Ground. They actually got were nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize just a while back. And I'm gonna chat her up and see what wisdom she has to share with us. Because here, I don't find it. Susan Collin Marks, welcome.
Thank you, Freya. I'm delighted to be here.
It's great. It's great that you're here. I'm proud that you're here. You're one of my most admired people that I'm allowed to know in this life. So thank you for that. Where are you calling from? I can see it's from your house, right?
Yes, I'm in my house in Amsterdam, and it's a beautiful day, and the sun is almost shining in the window, but not yet.
Great. You know what we're here to talk about, and I was just wondering, what was the first moment earlier this year when it struck you that this is something big that's happening to us, to our humanity, to our planet?
You know, Frey, that's a great question to start with, because there was for me a very defining moment in in April this year. And that was when the German president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, made a statement in which he said, "This is not a war. This is a test of our humanity." And it cut through everything that people had been saying and presented this in a whole new light, which fit very much with my own feelings about it, that this is about our common humanity. And this is a correction point. And then that was the first thing. And then there was a second piece. And the second piece was in May of this year. I saw this stunning photograph of Mount Everest and the Himalayas. And it was clear. The sky was clear. Mount Everest was clear. Now, I've worked a lot in Nepal and based in Kathmandu mostly. And you never see the mountains. You never see the Himalayas because of the pollution. And the photographer who took this said that we haven't seen this for 50 years. And I know that when we flew from Kathmandu's in the east and flying to the west, everybody wanted to get seats on the right-hand side of the plane so that they would get a chance perhaps to Mount Everest. And so it was going along, you know, with everybody piling over, and they had to keep pulling people back. So seeing how quickly the air cleared, it just told me so profoundly that we can mend our planet. So here were these two things. Yeah. The one addressing our need for empathy, for our common humanity. The one that was addressing also the loss and the grief that on the one hand is such a profound part of this, loss of life, loss of livelihood, loss of a sense of of knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah, but just to hang in there a little bit, because I think for most people that was going on in those months, March, April, May of this year, 2020. It was mostly filled with fear. Are we going to get sick? Who's going to die? What's going to happen to all the things that we're used to? We have to change our lives suddenly, forced by this strange unknown disease. So the picture that you paint is very, as how you've seen start very optimistically.
I saw it as a great awakening. That I did understand. But the piece about the German president was an acknowledgement, in my view, of the loss and grief. He was saying, this is a test of our humanity. How are we treating each other? How are we being with each other? How are we holding each other? And so for me, I got that message, and I hold right the way through as I go through this whole process, and will never stop holding that loss and grief in my one hand. But I also saw the possibility. Yes. And I saw the transformation that was waiting to come in, because we do need to transform the way we live on this planet. We've got a lot of things right, but we've got a lot of things wrong. And we've got,
what are these things? Yeah.
Basic things.
Yeah, like?
You know, my husband teases me because for the last, I told him this, it was before I knew him, for about 40 years, I have been saying that the economy has to change because it's so unjust. And I've been waiting for it to change. So every time something happened, I'd say, this is it. But it wasn't. I do believe that this is the moment when we will connect with that common humanity and understand that our economic, social, political, all our systems are geared towards divisiveness. They separate us, they push us apart, they put us into competition. Mm-hmm. They make some people better and some people less. They favor, the inequality comes because they favor a few and not the many. And so for me, this moment is a correction point. And circling back always, I say it's a correction point, circling back, the loss and the grief. They have to be together there. We can never forget the one as we encounter the other.
So, but how can you see the pandemic as a correction point? I can see it. So it points us to. Do you mean that it shows us where we've gone wrong in a way? It's like, is that what you're saying? It shows us, in a forced way, because it forces us nearly to look at ourselves. Is that also what you mean? To look at how we are treating ourselves, our planet, our animals. Is that how you're seeing it? Or could you clarify it a little bit? Is it like, who's actually talking? Who's actually talking through the virus?
Yeah.
Us.
You know, I love this quote from a wise old Inuit woman, Eskimo woman, who said, when she was asked, what's the meaning of life? She said, that's easy. It's to care for ourselves, to care for each other, and to care for the planet. And we have to start with caring for ourselves, rather like in an aeroplane when they say, and if you need oxygen, fit the mask on yourself first before you help somebody else. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of other people, so that together we can take care of the planet. And this pandemic, to me, is pointing out our interdependence, that we're a part of each other, that we belong to each other. Mother Teresa said that. She said, we belong to each other. Yes, we do belong to each other, and we've forgotten that. And in a way, this is about remembering who we really are. And so when you ask who is talking, to me, this is life talking, and life talking with a great deal of love.
Yeah.
You know, talking with love and saying, you wonderful, beautiful planet and people and life on this planet, there need to be some corrections. So it's not so much the corrections will come, but at the moment, we're seeing each other in new ways. We really are. We're caring for each other in new ways. And
How do you see that? How do you see that?
I see that in my own life and in the lives around me. I see that in reading articles in, I'm old-fashioned, I read newspapers.
Yeah, same here.
Articles, and there have been so many about the impact of isolation and lockdown, and from all over. And so many of them are saying, I'm getting back to my priorities by having to slow down. I'm going quieter within myself and getting a sense of what life is really all about. I'm caring for my neighbors because, well, that's what we do. And I'm experiencing the same thing in the building that I live in Amsterdam. There's tremendous love and care among the many people who live here. And of course, we all have our networks around, and we see that.
But don't you think that at a certain moment that will be gone again? I mean, also this was said at the beginning of the pandemic. This was kind of the atmosphere and the hope. And now we're like half a year in the, we're in the process. Basically, we're getting used to having a bit more distance to each other, working at home, things like that. Trying to plan our vacations, trying to have a little meeting. I mean, is it really going to have a lasting effect? Do you think so? Or does life needs to put another pandemic over us to teach us better if we don't listen? Or how do you see that?
This is not a strict teaching with a teacher with a
punishment, because some people say that too. It's a punishment for how we treat ourselves.
No, I don't see it at all. I see it as the most loving, as a loving approach, because we are learning about our interdependence. We're understanding again that we're a part of nature. We're not separate from nature. What we've done as humans is we've tried to dominate nature, and we have done an enormous amount of harm, and the harm has come back to us. Whenever any of us does harm, we become a part of that harm. It has a huge impact on us. Yes. And so the pandemic is not going to be over now, as things have been getting a bit better. This is going to take some time. If we look back at all previous pandemics, that's what we've learned. So, we're in the process. And I do believe that we are becoming a kinder and more loving world. Of course, there's always the other side of it. And one of the things, that I'm a South African, my upbringing is as a South African. And then I've lived in other parts of the world for most of my life. But I grew up in South Africa, and then I went back to be a part of the transition from apartheid to democracy. And what I saw there was that the old system, which was dying as the new was trying to emerge. So we would say the old is dying, the new has not yet born. And what we saw in the old system was that as it was dying, it lashed its tail. It did as much as it could in that time.
Yeah, I get that, yeah.
So what we're seeing at the moment is a system that's entrenched and that benefits from the present inequalities, holding on tight and fighting. But we're also seeing the movements of new ideas. We're seeing new generations coming in and saying, no, enough.
Do you think that some people who would see that can say like, oh, well, like I have that voice a bit inside me as well. Like I think, well, isn't this too good to be true? In fact, I mean, like human beings will always try to, it's a horrible thing. I don't even want to say it, but say that, to take things or to put things to their advantage, like naive to think this, How would you respond to those kind of thoughts or reactions?
I would say that this kind of transformation takes time, and we're all used to a certain way of being that's been around for a long time. And as we go within, because this is about going within, and in the quiet of lockdown, in the time that we spend at home, people have talked about that a great deal. Again, I go back to my newspapers.
Yeah.
There's been tremendous amount of writing about that, as well as listening to the world around me. So as we move into this transition, it's a transition. It takes time.
So you could actually, say that again, that last sentence.
We're only at the beginning.
I get it, yeah. And we also see it in our own lives, right? That something is forcing us. Sometimes you need to be forced to see what's going on, or to take that shift, to create that transition. Sometimes you need, also in your personal life, but also, I guess, in the system that we have on this planet, we need to be forced and hard, harshly, by also this sickness and loss to awaken, as you say, right? It can always be done softly and nicely.
We've had every opportunity to correct.
Yeah, ourselves, but voluntarily, and we didn't, basically.
We haven't.
Yeah.
And we haven't done it. So for me, this is a great awakening. It's some people call it a turning. And I have to say at this point, I'm not airy-fairy about this.
No, you're never airy-fairy. I know that, yeah.
As you know, I've worked over decades in some of the most violent conflicts on the planet. And I am fiercely practical. And I have been into the worst of humanity. And the amazing thing is that in the worst of humanity, in the midst of wars, I've been shot myself while mediating. In the midst of wars, the most astonishing things happen with people who just rise up into their greatest and best selves and say no, and stand against what's happening. So, my goodness, there's so many stories of that here from the World War II. There's so many stories of people saying no. So,
isn't this so important what you're saying? So it's not only that to see a situation and then think either this is an awakening point, or either maybe it will all be the same again and we'll always be exploiting each other or the planet. But isn't this also that we're creating what the future is by believing this, by being this? What you're actually at the moment, for me, embodying this belief, this love, this opportunity, because we have to turn it around, basically. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I absolutely do. And it's really up to us. We are always the sum total of the choices we've made in our personal lives, in our community lives, in our national lives, in our world lives. So everything is a choice point. And we're faced with choices now. And for some people, it's more difficult to change than for others. For some people, it's more difficult to see hope than others. It's not right or wrong or good or bad. It's just we're all different. I'm very lucky. I was born an optimist. I didn't have to work at it. And I couldn't do my work in the world if I wasn't an optimist.
Absolutely, I get that, yeah.
So what I'm seeing is that where I have hope and I meet somebody who doesn't, I want to take that person by the hand and say, come, let's look together at this. And where I am excited about one aspect of this, remember always the other aspect is there, and I meet somebody who's fearful, I want to say, can I put my arms around you?
Yeah.
Because when there's fear, what do? You always put your arms around fear.
Susan, it's the way you speak, it's so beautiful. And it also reminds me how easy it is to be dismissive of love, of a loving attitude. It's so easy to be harsh on or to be like, oh, blah, blah, airy-fairy indeed. Or, it's actually it's nearly too easy. It's too easy to do this.
Yeah. The word love has gone, it's lost its currency because it's been so used. And so love, as in Hollywood movies.
Yeah, romanticized and yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing. But when you think about love as, first of all, it's the energy of the universe. And love is what makes the whole thing stick together. But if that doesn't make sense to you, then let me try.
But explain more.
Yes, yeah. Let me try something else, which is...
because it'd be like too vague maybe for some people.
Yeah, for me, love means wanting the highest good for the other. So if I want the highest good, it must also be for me, because if I just want it for the other, then I'm a martyr. So I want the highest good for me and for the other. And that's how I talk about love, wanting the highest good. So if we haven't been living in our world from wanting the highest good of the other.
And the other also means in this case, as the quote that you have said before, it's also the other, maybe the other animal in a certain way, or the planet itself is also the other, right? Everything that we are in fact, you know, connected with, as we are all on this strange ball living.
And all life, absolutely.
All life, yeah.
It's about all life. This isn't just about humans, but we humans are the ticking mind of this planet.
We have the conscious, and we can actually have the creative force to mend and change, and you know, we got the divine force, in fact, to create and destroy much more than animals do.
Yes, and so we have a responsibility, and we were meant to be stewards of this planet, and so many are. So many are. You know, the thing to remember in this kind of conversation always is that essentially human beings are good. And most people get up in the morning wanting to be their best possible selves. There are very, very few people who get up and say, I'm going to be my worst self today, because that's not who we are. So
you try your best and then it doesn't work out, but at least this is what our intention is, in spite of it all, our own wounds and everything. So
yeah, but let me just say something more about that.
Yeah.
Every day, like the rest of us, I wake up and this is a new day. It's never been lived before, this day, and here we are entering it. And I know, I'm old enough to know that by the end of that day, I will have done things that I wished I hadn't done or not done, that I wish that I had said something or something different. So every day, I have learned that every day I will have to keep coming back to center, keep coming back to that essential goodness and do my best. I'm human like everybody else, and we all are going to wander off the main pathway. But we come back, just keep coming back, never give up, keep coming back, keep cleaning up the messes. That I know I'm going to have to keep cleaning up messes till the end of my life. I'm going to say the wrong thing or not do something.
So to come back again to this virus, this virus is helping us to, in this process, right, to show us what is the right thing to do. Is that what is here?
Just notice what's happening. People are really taking care of each other. In my building, we've had a death, not from the virus, but a man who had been ill for a long time. The whole building collected around the widow in a way that people would have been hugely sympathetic, but there was a huge outpouring. There have been all sorts of the normal things of life that have happened, and everybody has got involved. And when actually this man died, because it wasn't possible to have a funeral and have a lot of people there, the residents of my building stood 1.5 meters apart and formed an escort for his body to be taken out. They just did that. People just did that.
Yeah.
So it's just a small example of the many small things that make up the big things.
And how do you see the small things that are not so good, like the people that are much more isolated, lonely?
That's what the rest of us,
losing their job, their perspective.
That's the grief and the loss, and that's where we need that. That's what those of us, all of us, need to take care of each other, and that's what that's where we have to step in and step up to our very, very best selves. That's what I was talking about the grief and the loss of life, the people who are grieving lost relatives and friends, the people who've lost livelihoods, the people who are afraid of losing livelihoods. All of that, we have to hold it so carefully and do everything we can, and we have to push our governments, whether it's local or national, whatever level we're working at, we have to push them to take care of everybody who's affected by this. And when they don't, we need to do it ourselves. Yeah. And there are so many, certainly in other countries where I am involved, because of my work, I've got a lot of close people around the world. There's starvation there's no hope because there aren't any jobs. Everybody needs to step in who can and do however little we can do, we do it.
So let's collect some practical advice from your vision, from your view. What can we do ourselves in this regard? What can we do ourselves to live maybe this correction, or as you call it, this hope and this love power in our lives, our own lives? How do you see that? Where can we start?
Well, I think of it as an awakening rather than a correction. I've used that term to explain. But yes, I think there are a lot of things we can do. The first one, and the most important one, is to live our lives the way we want the world to be. So if I want a world in which we care for each other, that's what I must do in my life with everybody that I meet. If I want a world that is caring for the earth, I need to do that in my life as well as I can. And the second thing we can do is to expand what are called our circles of compassion. We have compassion and love for our families, for our friends, for the people we know. But often that ends at a certain point. And if you were to draw it, you would be able to draw a circle of, and there may be loved ones all over the world, there may be in another town, it doesn't matter. And we're being asked, and we can expand that to people we don't know and people we may never know. And to help with that, can we help with refugees? Can we help with people who are homeless? Can we help just with people, as you said, who are isolated? We can, and this is a really important one, and we really have the opportunity to do this because we have more spaces to clear the conflicts in our lives. Conflict is a great drain. Mm-hmm. And we all have them. Look, families are the same everywhere. We all have huge conflicts. And I think families are our biggest learning. Clear them, sort them out, sit down and talk to the people with whom we're in conflict. Because when we keep the conflict alive, it keeps the wounds open, and we need to heal right now.
Sometimes you got to accept that there are conflicts that cannot be resolved, but you bring peace.
Absolutely.
To yourself. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be on the same page or lovey-dovey, right? It can be also like you accept that some things are apart or different, and they are just the way they are.
Yeah. No,
bring peace to that in yourself. That's
That's good that you clarify. I'm so used to working with conflict, I don't always clarify things. And because that's my work in the world. What this isn't, it's not about ever giving up what's core to who you are. But we can clear the air between us and other people, which actually takes me to the next point that I would like to make, which is that to reach out to people who are different to ourselves, whether they're different politically or they're different ethnicity or different religion. And that's not about saying, oh, I agree with everything, but it is about saying you have the right and I have the right as individual human beings to have our thoughts, but we don't have to fight about them. Yeah. And we're respectful, and we can we can learn a very important thing, which is that listening is not agreeing. Listening is not agreeing. We can listen to each other. Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, an enemy is a friend waiting to be made.
Beautiful. It takes fear away from, oh my God, my enemy, this person hates me, or I hate whatever. It's a great different way of looking at it. Yeah.
But our different politics is only one aspect of our identity. Yeah. We also have got so many other ways. We as I've been talking about, we love our families. It's not going to, that's going to be the same in probably all these different religions and lives and so on.
And Susan, on a higher level, because that's all what we can do in our personal life as well, right? But when we look at the systems that we live in, every human is part of that system, basically. We allow the people that are in government or anything to do the things they do, or in all fields of life where there's power. How about that? How about because it does say something about how we're treating our world, each other. How do you see? Do you think we should find a way to? How can we influence that? In fact, from any perspective or point of departure.
It's exactly the right. Well, these are all such good questions. The first thing is to vote. In many countries, people don't bother to vote, and I come from a country where people died for the vote. To me, the vote is our voice. And actually, it comes from Old English, or does it come from Latin? It comes from a long time ago, and it means vow. The word vote comes from the word vow, to make a vow. So the first thing we can do is vote. And secondly, if it is given to us, not everybody can get involved at that level, which is why I've been focusing on the personal. But if we can, even if it's in our school or in our local community, in our building, wherever it may be, yes, absolutely, get your voice out there. Sound your notes when we speak, and we are making, we speak for a first time, for instance, in a committee meeting, we are sounding our notes, and we need to break, sometimes for many of us, we need to break the barrier of, how can I stand up and speak, and just do it anyway? Because what the world needs right now is wisdom. And we all have wisdom.
So I can stop this whole series. Now you've said it. That's all. That's all we're here for. What is Susan? I know. I don't want to make this too long, because I got to make my show shorter. I've been told, and they're right. But what is wisdom in your view? What is wisdom, in fact? How do you describe it?
Our inner knowing, and as we get used to accessing our wisdom, so it becomes more accessible. But when we start in the beginning, listening to that inner voice, we may get silence, trying to listen to it. We may get silence because it's so unused to being listened to.
Because then the other voices come in and say, what do you think? This is ridiculous. Just do your thing. This job, the people are like this. You got to be scared. You got to take power. You got to do this. These are the other voices that come up and dominate that wise voice, right?
And so we just have to be very strong and keep accessing, keep listening. And the more we listen, the more we allow the access to that inner being, that inner knowing, that guide, that guidance, the more accessible it becomes. And as we live our lives more and more through this deep inner knowing, and we live our lives the way we want the world to be, and we expand our circles of compassion, we clear out the conflicts so the wisdom can increase. We're clearing the clutter, and we're bringing in what really matters. And we're learning to trust that voice and trust ourselves. And the deepest thing that we can learn from this is to trust ourselves, and trust ourselves that, yes, we can make a difference just by how we live. And then if we have the grace, by what we can do out there in the world, but starting with ourselves. So now is a time to attend to our own lives, so that we can deeply attend to and care for others and care for the planet. And that's what we're called to do right now, right here, at this moment, wherever we are.
Susan Collin Marks, thank you very much. What a beautiful and wise weekend takeaway this is.
Thank you, Frey. Bless your heart. This has been such a lovely thing to do with you.
Thank you, darling, and have a wonderful weekend.
And you too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
The weekend takeaway. If we follow Susan's wisdom, then this coronavirus is sometimes painfully reminding us that we have become disconnected from our planet, each other, and ourselves in some sort of way. So how do we connect again? If we tune into our inner knowing, then we will find many answers. This is how Susan calls wisdom, in fact, our inner knowing, remember? So what do you find when you tune into your inner knowing? What would be the most loving thing to do? To the people around you, to somebody around you that you might have a conflict with, to maybe people that you don't even know? Or maybe you want to raise a fist because you see injustice happening somewhere. And when you do that, don't forget, when you raise a fist, to keep your mind listening. Because listening does not mean that you're agreeing. I love that. In the end, all of us, we're all part of this same bloody thing called life. Fellow human beings, have a wonderful